and we will. At this point, it's actually since we're already live on two things, it's less of a thing, right? So, okay, we should theoretically be live on YouTube. Welcome everybody to Live Coding Happy Hour for whatever the heck date is, July 14th, 2017. I am Dave Slusher. I'm a developer evangelist with ServiceNow in the platform business unit, and with me, we're preserving his voice because he's kind of sick, and we may have a finite amount of it, and he's the main driver today, is my partner, Josh Nerius, also a developer evangelist in the same team as me, same business unit, etc., etc. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you, Dave, and thank you for preserving my voice. We will see how this goes. This is going to be interesting.
Yeah, and I actually don't, and probably nobody minds if you do a little less talking than would be typical in what we do in this thing. So let us get right to it. Let's do a little bit of background. We kind of back up every now and then. This is the first time that we're doing the three-way multiplexing with Restream. So we have been doing this on YouTube for about a year now. I have to look up the exact day. So we've been doing this for about a year. It's the first time we've done an actual live coding happy hour on Twitch. We've done some experiments, but we haven't actually done the show yet. And also first time we've done it on live edu.tv. So what we do is on Friday afternoons, to the new two sites, this is what everyone does. So it's less of a novelty to you guys. But we get together, we close our week out by turning the screen share on. We start coding. We do some ServiceNow coding, which is our jobs. And we just sort of let it rip. We don't do any kind of demo type material here. What we're doing is actually picking a problem we're really legitimately working on, and then we just turn the screen on and share it. And at the same time, we're drinking beer. And to seg into that, I'm drinking a fine Leinenkugel cranberry ginger shandy. So
that actually sounds really good.
Yeah, it's I was a little bit worried. It's one that I've been rearranging my office, which is, as I told Josh, there was a mild disaster when I realized about 11:30 this morning that my beer fridge is off and has been off for 2 days, and so I had to put this in the freezer to get it drinkable. And it wasn't even in the fridge; it was kind of sitting out. Who knows how long it's been sitting out, but it's drinkable still. So good. And what are you drinking, Josh?
So I have today Dayquil Severe. I have some tea, and just because I had to feel like I was opening a can, I have some LaCroix sparkling water, and that is what I'm drinking today. Unfortunately, no beer, because I think that would probably interact very badly with the other stuff.
Josh is on the injured reserve. He's coming in off the bench. All right. Okay. Anything else that we need to talk about before we get right to it? I'm gonna do my best. I literally am provisioning a 1+5 that I just got, so it's gonna be so hard to actually pay attention for the next 50 minutes. But oh, and also my get up. The second we stop streaming, I'm getting in the car and going to a water park. So I am completely. I'm wearing a swimsuit right now. So it's an extremely weird version of it. For our first show on Twitch and Live EDU, it's an extremely weird show. So let us get to it. Tell us what we're going to be doing this week, Josh.
Yeah, so this week we're going to actually build a Slack integration. And it's actually, so I've done some things with Slack integrations in the past, and you can call the Slack APIs, or you can do webhooks into Slack, that kind of thing. But one of the things that we have talked about over in the SN Devs channel numerous times is building some kind of a Slackbot. And so today we're actually going to build a Slackbot, and in particular, we're going to build a Slackbot that tracks points. So there's a ++ bot that's currently in use over in SN Devs, and you type in somebody's name and ++, and it gives them a point, and it keeps track of it. But as everybody from SN Devs knows, that thing has not been stable. It's not been working correctly, and I think it was Jace and probably a few people actually mentioned this over in that channel. They're like, hey, why don't we just build a Slack bot and integrate it with ServiceNow? Let ServiceNow do all that. So that's what we're going to attempt to do today. We're going to try to build a Slack bot. We're going to look at things like the events API in Slack, and also calling some of the other APIs to actually post messages to a Slack channel. And we're also going to actually really do it in the SN Devs LCHH Slack channel today. So things might get a little fun.
Do you remember what the sign up URL is for that? Is it SNDevs.heroku.com.
I think it's snowslack.heroku.com. So SNOWSLACK. Let me just check this so that we're
just
not
in case
lying.
somebody's wants to join that, which it does exist.
So actually, it's not there. Maybe it's sndevs.com.
Tell you
Let's
what.
try that.
Yeah, I thought it was SNDevs at whatever it was.
Yeah, so actually, here's what it is. So if you just go to sndevs.com, there's a link out there to snowslack.herokuapp.com. So
okay, great.
That's the easiest way. You put in your email address, get an invite. Great place to chat with other ServiceNow developers. And so if you're following along and you're not there, that's where we'll be. So,
okay. All right. You want to hit the share button?
That is what I will do. So let's go ahead and right click. There we go. Share screen. Share the correct screen, hopefully. And turn off the video. And how's that looking?
It looks great. All right.
Okay.
I see your Slack.
Good deal. So we're over
my video
in LCHH. So I'm going to work today in my employee instance. And I'm doing this. One of the things that we potentially need to do is actually find a more permanent place for this, because if we're, hosting a Slackbot, we need this thing to be up and running. So we're going to use an internal instance for this. I'm going to start in my employee instance, and then we might push this somewhere else when we actually get it working. To actually build stuff in Slack, it's pretty easy to get started. So if we go to, I think it's apps.slack.com, or is it, I think that's what it is. No, that's not it. Let's just go to slack.com. And we will select the ServiceNow team. Oh, so that's actually where we already were. So we go to apps and integrations, and this is going to open up the UI where you can actually install existing apps. But in this case, we actually want to build one. So we're going to go to build and start building. I haven't actually decided what we should call this thing.
Naming things is the bane of this show.
Let's just call it points thing.
Points thing is good with me. Let me look at the chats right quick just to see if anybody has a. Just to throw out, not that we have any kind of dearth of ideas, because just to open the kimono for a minute, we have so many ideas we don't get to. But like if we have a thing that could integrate all three chats into a mega chat, that would be a thing.
Oh man,
it may exist in Nightbot. I don't know if there's a thing that already does that, but to not have to monitor three things would be pretty sweet. Actually, that would be, because if you count the Slack that we're integrating with, that's a fourth different chat for today's show. So,
yeah. So let's see. So we've got a couple of things that we need to look at. So when you actually first build your app, you can select what kinds of functionality it's got. And so we actually need a bot, and we also need events. So let's take a look at the bots first. So we'll add a bot user. And it actually just handily enough calls it points thing right off the bat. I'm going to just tell this to show the bot is always online. You can actually decide whether or not you want the bot to always show up as being online. And then let's take a look at event subscriptions. So what happens, so Slack, when you want to get real-time information, has this events API. And what this does is it allows you to subscribe to certain things as they happen. So, for example, if I look at, let's see, what these various events are, we can see things like a channel was created, a channel was deleted, archived, etc. So what we want is, I think, message.im. So a message was posted. No, that's in a direct message channel. Message.channels. So a message was posted to a channel. So this is what we actually want to subscribe to. And so as you can see, there's a lot of stuff you can subscribe to, but in this case, we actually just want to watch messages as they come through. Now, you might be thinking this sounds an awful lot like webhooks, and it kind of does. When we've talked about webhooks before, and this is not exactly the same. I mean, it's very similar in concept. Basically what's going to happen is anytime this event happens, Slack is going to post information about the event to some endpoint, and we're actually going to create that endpoint. But Slack has a different thing called webhooks, and it's not this. So their thing is called event subscriptions. But it's just worth noting, because if this sounds like webhooks, looks like webhooks, it actually kind of is, but it's just not what Slack chose to call it. So the next thing is we actually need to send this data somewhere. And so we need to send this data to some kind of service, and we don't actually have that service yet. So that's actually what we have to do now, is actually build it. So let me go back to my instance. And we'll just fire up Studio. And the massive list of things that I have in here. And we'll create Slack points thing.
Anytime, so here's that thing that just part of our process. We should maybe think about the name ahead of time while we're creating new applications. I have never once done it, but it might be a thing to. Maybe you should put that on our punch list.
That's probably not a bad idea. Yeah, because I don't know if we'll regret this or not. We'll see. So we need a scripted REST API, and so we'll create one of those. And we'll say Slack events, I guess handle Slack events. Yeah, naming things is hard. And then we need a resource. This resource is going to be a post. And we'll just call this handle. Oh, see, I already called the API handle Slack events. I'll just call it handle event. I just don't like that, but that's fine. So
the SN Dev Slack channel is not normally getting this much screen time, so hopefully these guys don't go too crazy. It's sort of a thing, right? Usually they're kind of in the background, but they're actually front and center in the stream quite frequently today. So
yeah, it's gonna be all over the place. So don't say anything you don't want everybody to see. I probably shouldn't have said that. So I don't think we have any griefers. We also need to turn off authentication, so we'll do that. And what we can do now is just to make sure this thing works. I'll click Explore REST API. This brings up the REST API Explorer. Here's my thing, the whole URL. And if I go and I paste this on the Slack side, you'll see it's probably not going to work. So your URL did not respond with the value of the challenge parameter. So what this is doing, so the thing that Slack does is there's this challenge process. Let me go to challenge request. Here we go. So it's this URL verification handshake. So they don't just let you put in a URL. They make sure that your API or whatever that URL is actually and truly set up to handle this. So they send this token, this challenge, this type as their initial request. And then we're actually expected to respond with the value of challenge in the body. So that's something that we're going to have to do. So that's, I guess, the next thing is we'll go back here and we'll say, so if it's going to be request.body.data, and this is going to represent, let's just look at that again. So it's got token and challenge. So request.body.data.challenge. So if this thing exists, then we actually want to respond with it. And because we just need to set the entire body, we actually need to take control of the response. So we're going to say response dot.
So we've got a question from the chat. Forgive me, I'm paying attention to many things. So I will. My attention is more fragmented this week than usual. We have a question. What's the request format for the API?
So the request format from
Slack, yeah.
Yeah, from Slack is coming in JSON. So this is the actual thing that they're going to send us. This is an example payload. Simple JSON object with 3 properties. And so because of that, we're able to do this, scripted REST APIs automatically will parse that payload. So it's actually going to come back. We can just say .challenge. We don't have to do any of the parsing ourselves.
Yeah, if you weren't watching last week, last week's show had the little tip where I figured out how to get data out of something where it does not set the content type to either application JSON or application XML. So it's actually a thing. And I made a blog post this week about it. So it's if your I didn't realize this until last week, is that if your incoming type isn't application JSON or application XML, it makes sense that it won't automatically do that marshal. That request body data object won't exist unless it knows for a fact that you're JSON or XML. It's kind of, even though the situation that I was running in is where the payload was XML, but the application type was like text plain or something like that. And so once I made it accept that, it actually body data stops working, because basically your ServiceNow instance says, I can't verify what this is, so it doesn't know what to do with it. So
got it. That actually makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. One of the things I also want to call attention to is when you do response, there's this thing called set body, and I've never actually gotten that to work. I'm not even sure why it's there or if it's even a real thing, but this appears to be the correct thing to do. So you get the stream writer, and then you write a string directly to the response, and this seems to be the correct way to do that. So if you've ever run into that, you're trying to do a set body, check out this thing instead. So in theory,
you want to test this? You want to test this by firing up REST API Explorer, or do you want to just go straight for the thing?
You know what? Let's test it first. I want to actually see. So we should be able to say, let's send a raw JSON thing, and so we'll say challenge. And so in theory, the response should just be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we'll call that, and the response is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're good. Cool. So now we can go back here, and we can, which window? Here it is. We'll retry it. Okay, so it's verified. So we actually have a verified endpoint now. It's responding to the challenge, and we're actually getting stuff. So that's good. So the next thing we want to do is so if we look at our scripted REST API, we're saying if the challenge is there, but then there's going to be this else. So if the challenge is not there, we assume that this is just a normal message. For now, I'm just going to do a gs.info, and I guess we'll say request.body.data string. How's that? And even though I'm not drinking beer, I think Dayquil is worse.
No doubt.
Oh man. So if I just like disappear and fall asleep, even though it's supposed to be non-drowsy, I don't think that's actually true. So we'll try, I guess what we actually need to do is we actually need to try generating real events. And so to do that, so we've got this thing registered, but we actually have to get this Slackbot into a room. So if we go back here, I guess the question is, can we invite, what do we call that? It was just points thing. Is it here? A valid team member name is required. So I think we need to install this. So even though it's not actually, yeah, here we go. So we have to do install app to team and confirm your identity on ServiceNow, add a bot with this username. Yep. So go ahead and authorize that.
Do you have permission on Slack to do this?
I appear to have permission on Slack because that appears to have worked. And there we go. Points thing is now in the LCH channel from an invitation. So what that should mean now is that because we've actually subscribed to messages and the bot is here, I'm just going to say hello points thing. Yeah, I'll give that some party parrots too. There we go. And now what we need to do is we need to go back to my instance. Let's open up the logs. And we'll wait. And while we're waiting, I'll get a sip of tea. So we have log entries coming from the app, but it's looking like the Slack payload is empty. So let's take a look at that. And I think the easiest thing is actually going to be to fire up the debugger. So why did that not clicking a breakpoint? It's not setting a breakpoint. Oh, there it is. I think my instance is just really slow right now for some reason. All right, breakpoint set. Now we'll try hitting this from the REST API Explorer again. And transaction paused at breakpoint, and let's take a look. So request. I can't actually, because it's a scriptable object, it doesn't appear to let me actually drill into it. You know what I think is happening is, I have noticed this before with scripted REST APIs, where once you've actually read the body once, you can't read it again. Or something like that. Let's try this. JSON.stringify. Request.body. We'll generate another message. We'll take a look at the logs again. Very slowly. Wow, that is just so slow. Hello instance, what's going on? There we go. Okay, so the payload is empty according to this. So, I mean, we're definitely getting a request. We're just not seeing. Oh, this is why. Because body is not the thing, data is the thing we want to stringify. We're going to end up putting a lot of junk into the LCHH channel today.
So be it.
This actually might be I might just have an inefficient query going on here because I'm filtering. I would think that source would be an okay thing to filter on, but it appears that that is part of the issue. So, okay, there we go. So we actually are getting a body or a payload. So let's go ahead and open this thing up. Let's just fire up Visual Studio Code. Here, we'll take a look at it. All right, so we've got a couple things coming through. So there's a token that we're supposed to actually validate. We're not going to worry about that yet. We can see the team ID, the actual event. So the event type is message, the user. And this is interesting because I've noticed this with Slack APIs is the user that you actually see is So actually, we'll try this. If I take this user, and if I come over into the Slack channel and do @ and then the actual, that whole username, notice that it turns into my name, which is weird. But anyway, so we've got the user. We have the text, so test3 and everything else. So at this point, I think what probably makes sense is to start putting this into a table. So we want to do some kind of processing on it. But one of the things that in reading through some of the Slack documentation, they highly recommend ingesting the data and then processing it so that you can reliably respond quickly to the event request from Slack. That's usually what you want to do. So let's go ahead and create a table. And I guess this we can call Slack event. That one's easy to name, although I don't like that. Slack point, Slack event.
Yeah, for those new to this, that's kind of how scoping works, right? You've got you've got a prefix that's just going to come down, and sometimes your prefix just makes your table. You sort of have to kind of get over that in the ServiceNow world because you don't really have a lot of control over that. Once you have fixed it for your application, then everything gets prefixed with it. Your scope is basically a namespace, and so you kind of have to live with that.
Yeah, and I mean, that's one of the things that you sometimes want to try to think ahead as to what you want to call it so that you don't hate the name of everything that you have to create from that point forward, which is sometimes easier said than done. So, all right, so we've got our Slack event table. Let's go ahead and copy that. And then over here, instead of logging it, we're going to do I start talking a little bit less because my voice is actually starting to go away.
Yeah, I'm doing a poor job of I'm doing it for you. I'm actually doing my absolute best. I'm absolutely doing well. I'm not looking at the phone actually. The combination of live.edu.tv actually is having a little bit of problems. I think we maybe are exceeding the bit rate of what they can handle. So
got it.
Doing customer support thing. I was like, oh geez, trying to deal with that.
All right, there we go. So we're going to create a record. We're going to insert it. And all we're setting at this point is the payload. So we'll try that. And let's do some more stuff. And we'll test the table. So go to the Slack events, and there it is. So we've got our payload. We've got the stuff coming in. Now, the other thing we want to think about is, okay, so I just noticed there's a question in the live chat. So initialize or new record, are there practical differences? There are practical differences, and those are that new record will apply default values, whereas initialize will not. So if there are default values or fields that could have default values, you want to use new record. In this case, we don't have that. We don't care. So we are just using initialize. So because this is a point spot, we actually want to make sure that this thing has ++ in it. And I don't know if that's ultimately the thing we want to do, but if we want to basically make this thing behave like the existing bot, that's probably what we should do. So with that in mind, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if request.body.data, let's look at this structure really quick, data.event.text, data.event.text, and I think contains is a thing. And there are probably all sorts of weird things that we'll have to worry about here, but we'll just start with this. So at this point, we're basically just saying that If it doesn't contain it, we're not even going to store it. We're just going to throw it away. Because those are the only things we want. We don't want to store every single message that ever happens. That would just get ridiculous. So let's try that. We will say points thing plus plus. That way we're not giving. I don't think the real point spot's over here anyway, but that's all right. So we'll go ahead and look at that payload. And actually, let me put the created column out here. All right, just so we know which one we're actually looking at. So there it is. There's the text. There is the user. And again, we see that it's actually turning that username into the user ID. So that could be interesting. But at this point, what we can do is we can start to track this. So I guess the question is, we should probably create a Slack user table. And then every time we actually see something for a particular user, we'll go ahead and look up that user or create that user.
Are we going to, so that's coming in as the user ID. So Slack is converting username to sysid basically, or user, GUID, and then using that when it's sending that back to you for the app mentioned, right? So do you need to, can you go back to your payload for 1 second?
Oh, actually,
the one you were just looking at, the one that had the that guy right there. So there's nothing in. So you're going to need a separate call if you don't have, U6A4 blah 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 in your system. You're going to need to look that up, right?
Well, potentially. So here's the thing. I think so. Again, if I copy this and I paste this over here, it's going to just show up as the actual user. So
okay.
Yeah.
So it's automatically referencing and dereferencing that thing for you.
Yeah, it appears to be. So I think what that means is we can just store the ID. It might be a nice enhancement to call the API to look up the user at some point. But I think for at least our first go around, we can just store the value, or just store the ID. So there are a couple ways I guess we could think about this. I guess what probably makes the most sense is just to say that, Slack user. Try that. There we go. Slack user. Slack point Slack user. I already don't like it. User ID. That's just going to be a string. And then points. That's going to be an integer. And so what we want to do, well, so I guess here's what we want to do is I should probably at some point put this in the business rule or put this in a script include, but I'm going to just throw a business rule on the Slack event table for now. And we'll say process points. It's going to be on Slack event. And we'll run this on insert only. We'll run this advanced. We're going to run this asynchronously. And what we actually have to do is look this thing up. So let's say so we have to parse that payload. And then we can say user ID is event dot So, this is going to get interesting because this thing, we need to parse this out.
Oh, you have to figure out. Okay, so you need a regular expression to get solely. So here's the deal. You've got that thing in the text. Why is that different than the user up above it, immediately up above it?
Well, so the user above it is the user that
user
actually
is the user
initiated it.
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
got it.
yeah. So,
all right, let's pick up our favorite regular expression testers. Rubular.com is one that I like, but
Rubular. All right, there we go. So here's our test string, and oh my goodness, this is gonna test the memory of.
All right, left bracket. I think I can do this for you in one shot. I'm sorry, left less than square bracket caret right greater than square bracket right bracket, yeah, plus right angle bracket. I'm not good at many things, but I can write a damn regular expression. The whole thing. So this is actually just to tell you why I'm doing that. This is I learned this in the Jeffrey Friedel book. I think in Mastering Regular Expressions, a Riley book that I read. I don't know, somewhere between 15 and 20 years ago. And he was talking about backtracking in regular expressions. And when you have ambiguity, particularly, so it's not going to matter too much here, but when you have really long input strings, you can actually kind of watch this sort of geometric progression as you have so many different ways to parse it. But when you do something like this, you're basically saying, my character class, I'm saying, is not a right bracket. So the first time you see a right bracket, that character class is done. So there's no backtracking whatsoever. So if you did a dot star, you could do that. But then if you had a long string, it would go to the end to see like what other possible. It would start at the end and then it would backtrack to find the minimal search potentially. So that's why I almost never write a wildcard. I always just say, if we're going until we see a right bracket, then we're just going to say our character classes, everything is not a right bracket.
That makes sense. The whole the look behind stuff is weird to me, but then again, I think regular expressions are weird to most people.
I'm one of the few people that really enjoys them. So. I will admit that I'm weird.
So now what we have to do is I have to remember how to actually call that in JavaScript. It's called let's see, what's the thing? Match? Yeah, I think it's match JavaScript. Let's open this up. Because we actually have to extract the string. Yeah, I think it is .match. So let's just do this. We will put. Let's go and get our actual payload. Yep, there it is. So here's the question: is let's see, we actually want what's inside.
I think you want element. So you should be getting a So get the match, and I believe you're going to get an array. Is match a so capture the value, and I think what you want is what you actually want. So in your regular expression, write put parentheses.
Oh, right, because we have to.
Because you want to capture. Right.
Yep.
And then I think you want element 1 of the.
What did I miss? I think I've got an extra thing there. Now it's no. Let's go back to Rubular.
So you want your parentheses around the character class, not inside it.
Oh.
And around the plus, on the far side of the plus. There you go.
Okay. That makes sense.
That is, that right there is what you want.
Now we're talking. Yep. So like you said, we want element 1. And there it is. Cool. So we can now say event.text. Let's go back and pull out this regular expression. It's event.text, right? Yep, event.text. .match. 1. Now, the one area that this is going to fail, and I'm just going to go with this for now, but there is a possibility that the thing we're plussing is not a user.
Mm-hmm.
And so this could fail. So we'll have to handle that at some point, but I'm just going to go with this for now.
Yeah, what happens if you Yeah, I see what you're saying. So if you just plus like arbitrary text, it will just be arbitrary text and it won't have that bracketed format.
Yeah, so like this, tried that there, and let's look at the payload that we get. Oh, let's sort this correctly. There we go. Looking at the wrong thing. So yeah, it's just going to be that.
However, what if the text you sorted was bracket something bracket?
Huh. Yeah.
So we might have to deal with a little bit of nonsense there. But again, that's kind of an edge case. We can.
Yeah, we'll build
just
out those
note
cases
that
as
that's a thing we have to do later. But
yeah,
for right now, it's not a priority to.
So we'll do gr user points plus, and then we'll update it. And then if that doesn't work, we'll say .initialize .user ID equals user ID. And we'll start them with 1 point. There we go. Save it. So let's do this. Give Dave some points.
I get the ceremonial first. It's funny is that also gave me a Slack notification when you did that.
Nice. Now the real question is, did you actually get points? We don't know yet, but we'll find out. So let's go into Slack. Whoops. Slack users.
Looks like not.
Oh no, Dave didn't get points. So let me see. If I had to bet, it's probably not liking something up here. Let's just make sure this thing is running when we think it is. It's running on insert, so that's good. It's running on the Slack event table. Let's do this. Let's actually run this thing after, which then means we can attach to it. And I'm going to take this payload. We'll go to REST API Explorer, and let's try this out. Oh, well, I need to actually set a breakpoint, so let's do that. So here we go. We'll step through. So there's the event object, and we've got, there's our event. Oh, that seemed to actually die right away. So it definitely didn't like this. So let's go.
You want to look at the log to see.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's do that.
Just see what it was complaining on as it died.
We'll wait for my speedy syslog to come up. At line 12.
Undefined value. So the match is so. Oh, whoa. It wasn't what we thought.
Well, that's pretty weird. Well, we're also getting at line 1. Okay, that should be in here. Did I actually call that thing points? Let's take a look at the user. Yeah, it's called points. User ID. Did I do something weird with share Slack user?
If next.
Oh no! Thanks, Andrew. I appreciate it. Let's see. That's a. Maybe he doesn't like the ++. Can't imagine why it wouldn't, but then again, it is a glide. It's going to be an object or something at that point.
So Tariq is asking, why can't you just dot walk in that object to get the user? Because okay, you can go ahead.
Yeah, actually go for it because I'm going to drink some tea.
So what we've got here is it's not like a sys user that we can, that's built in. There's a reference type. That user is the text that came in from that payload. So it's not dot walkable. It's not a thing that our system knows about.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's why we've got to parse it.
That is put it another way. That's not sys user. That's like arbitrary Slack weirdo sysid thing.
Did it actually do something this time? Where is my breakpoint? Too many transactions pause. Oh, this thing still paused? Okay, that's why. I just need to let that thing go. That's why. So let's go back here. Let's run this again. Now we can do that. Yeah, it's still immediately dying right here. So,
are we not? Maybe what we're doing is not. So let's go back to your script background.
Oh, wait a second.
Let's just. What the? Huh?
So this just went down here. don't know what that just did. Oh, this is actually in the, I stepped into the REST resource. That's why. So, yeah, so let's go back.
Do we have, let's make sure that we have the, make sure that we have the identical regex.
I copied it before, so we should. Yeah, let's paste. So I'm not going to try running this again without trying to extract the first element or the second element technically, and see if there's something. I don't know what's going on. That's weird. Debugger. It does not like it.
Is event.text what you think it is?
That's a good question. Let's try that next. Because we're saying event is current.payload. So let us. Actually, I believe it is because we tried that a minute ago. Let me hit this again. Back to debugger. And here's the event object. So let's go into it. So there's, oh, hang on. Oh, that's why. Because there's an event inside. So actually, I've probably called this something that's not really what we should be calling it. I should be calling this the payload. There we go. I think that's going to take care of it. Let's run that. I still have it paused. Breakpoint. Let's run that again. Step over. Now we're getting what we want. And there's user ID. So I think this is actually going to work. So let's just let this go. I'm going to go ahead and close out the debugger. And let's look at the table. There we go. So user ID now has 2 points.
Fantastic. And so we're doing this. The interesting thing is that your instance now actually doesn't have it can keep track of these things without actually knowing who any of those people are.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then so the next step and what we would do, although I don't think we should probably start trying to do this because we only have about 7 minutes left, is to respond. And at that point, there's a different API. So there's a web API that allows us to actually talk to the channel. And so what we would do is take that data from here. So as you know, as part of the final step, we've inserted this, and then we've got the object, and then we would actually post a message back to the channel with this user ID now has X number of points.
I'm just goofing around because I want to go. Let's open this up in a second, and let's go back to that. So, interestingly enough, let's do points thing. You know, because of the nature of how we're doing this, we're only gonna. If you did 2 in one line, you're only gonna get the first one, right?
Yeah, you're probably I think that's
because
correct.
the reg X is only going to get one thing. So go back to your instance and let's see. We should have several people now. Yeah,
we do. Cool. So it's collecting them, and yeah, it's working.
Cool. All right. So do you want to? Is there anything else you want to do now? Or do you want to hold up right there?
You know, I think this is probably a good place to pause because The next thing is basically dealing with an entirely different kind of integration, and so it probably makes sense to come back to that in a future live coding session. So,
okay. All right. So I think we had a 2/3 success rate in this experiment. The live EDU TV didn't work great. I think our bit rate maybe was set too high. I'm not sure what we have in OBS. We may have to crank that down. Twitch seemed to work just fine, and YouTube seemed to work just fine. Let me see if we have any last minute questions. No, I don't think so. So we've got a lot of activity in the Slack channel, a bunch of goofiness happening. So yeah, I think that seems good to me.
Yeah, I think so. So let me go ahead and shut off sharing.
All right.
And turn the camera back on.
Turn mine back on. I have mostly resisted playing with my phone. I will not say that I have 100% resisted. I may have added my left thumb to the fingerprint sensor while we were on.
Nice.
The Leinenkugel Cranberry Ginger Shandy, solid 4. Part of that is contextual because it's exactly what I'm in the mood for right this second. How's your Dayquil and tea?
The Dayquil is helping. The tea is actually, for being, more of a medicinal tea that's supposed to help your throat feel better, is actually not bad. It actually is kind of tasty, which is a weird thing to say about it, but it's okay.
Interesting. All right. So there you have it. There's a live coding happy hour for this week. We're going to stop a couple minutes early, and Josh is going to go back to bed, and I'm going to go to a water park. So thanks, everybody.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. And we will catch you all again. I think we're going to do it next week. We've been kind of, there have been a lot of weeks that have, we've had some issue or another. I think we'll be around next week. So should be. So see you next time, everybody.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.